For 3,000 years we thought we were untouchable. 3,000 years? Can you even fathom that kind of arrogance? The Vex Collective ruled the galaxy with an iron fist, or rather with 17 iron tentacles and one prehensile tail, and nobody dared to challenge us. Not the Corellians with their pathetic heat shields, not the Morathan swarms with their numbers that looked impressive until you realized they died in seconds. Certainly not the miserable bipedal primates called humans who lived on that dusty little rock orbiting a yellow star. But here is where the story takes an absolutely delicious turn. We were catastrophically, monumentally, embarrassingly wrong. My name is Kesh-Tollan, and I am, or rather I was, the Supreme Commander of the Vex Collective's Outer Rim Invasion Fleet. I held the rank of Destroyer of Worlds, which sounds impressive until you realize that I spent the last 80 years destroying exactly 0 worlds. Do you know how humiliating that is? Imagine having a business card that says you are the world champion at something, but you have never actually competed. That was me. The humans you see were supposed to be a joke, a cosmic footnote. Their planet was charted, categorized and scheduled for resource extraction by Q432 of the standard calendar. Their civilization was approximately 600 years ahead of the Stone Age equivalent but several millennia behind actual spacefaring species. They had roughly 8 billion individuals crammed onto their world like sardines in a recycled cargo container. They killed each other for abstract concepts like borders and ideologies. They had not even managed to leave their star system. It was the perfect target for a morning conquest followed by lunch back at base. Emperor Vrel himself gave me the assignment. Vrel, whose skin shifted colors based on his emotional state, which was mostly purple, indicating his permanent mood of arrogant confidence. He gave me a fleet of 2,000 ships. Merely 2,000. He chuckled, the deep, resonant chuckle that made his scales ripple. He told me that bringing anything larger would be insulting to the human race. Insulting, as if they would even notice the insult before they were converted into nutrient paste. I remember standing in the observation deck of my flagship, the Devastation's Whisper, watching the blue marble of Earth grow larger as we approached. My tactical officer, a nervous Quillan named Hextro, kept providing useless updates. Ship status, nominal. Weapons systems charged. Translation matrices online. I was not interested in competence. I was interested in conquest. I was interested in adding another world to my resume. Most of all, I was interested in that promotion to High Council that had been dangled in front of me like a protein lure. The first mistake I made was underestimating human stubbornness. When we arrived at their planet, our transmissions demanded immediate surrender. The standard protocol, the humans would panic, their governments would capitulate, and within 72 hours, we would be harvesting their resources. Instead, they did something genuinely perplexing. They refused. Not politely, not with negotiation. They refused with every fiber of their being, which apparently was a very fibrous thing indeed. Their single unified leader, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who had somehow convinced 7 billion humans to actually work together, sent a message back to our fleet. She said something that I initially found hilarious. She said, "You have conquered 1,000 worlds. You know how to take. You have never learned how to resist. Today that changes." I actually laughed. Hextro looked at me with genuine concern as my vocal plates vibrated with mirth. I told him that the humans had humor. How delightful. How tragic for them. Our weapon systems would warm up nicely while I enjoyed the comedy show. What I did not appreciate, what I catastrophically failed to appreciate, was that while I was laughing, the humans were already implementing their strategy. A strategy that had been in development for exactly 342 days. A strategy that had united their religious factions, their political enemies, and their warring nations into a singular, focused, absolutely terrifying machine of vengeance. The second mistake I made was splitting my fleet. Standard doctrine dictates that for maximum planetary coverage, a commander should distribute forces across 8 primary deployment zones. I followed that doctrine because I was trained, because I was experienced, and because I was a complete and utter fool. That split left each sector with approximately 250 ships. Powerful, yes. Overwhelming to any conventional threat, yes, but scattered. The humans did not attack our ships. They attacked our communications relay stations. All of them, simultaneously. Their missiles, crude, chemical-powered, absolutely primitive compared to our photon cannons, somehow knew exactly where every single relay was positioned. They took out our infrastructure first. They removed our ability to coordinate before they even engaged us in combat. It was strategic in a way I had not expected from beings who still drove vehicles powered by fossilized dinosaurs. Sarah Chen and I have had considerable time since these events to respect that woman, even as she orchestrated my humiliation, had somehow compiled data on our entire fleet composition, our defensive protocols, our command structures, and our backup systems. While we were busy demanding surrender, she was busy orchestrating the most coordinated military response in galactic history. The first engagement happened over their North American continent. My ships descended, weapons primed, ready to establish orbital bombardment stations. That is when their first countermeasure activated. It was not a weapon, it was a signal. Suddenly every piece of advanced Vex technology on their planet, and yes, we had left previous occupation equipment deployed across their world because we assumed they were too primitive to understand it, suddenly went dormant, locked, weaponized. Those ancient Vex installation nodes, which were supposed to give our forces superior technological advantages, became forward defense positions for the humans. Then came the barrage. Not from their primitive missiles, from those nodes. From our own stolen technology, reconfigured and amplified through methods I still do not fully understand. A captain named Maximilian Torres, a human with more tactical brilliance than most military commanders I have served under, had reverse-engineered 14,000 years of technological advancement in just over 3 centuries. The first wave of Vex ships did not merely fail to establish bombardment positions. They were systematically, methodically, efficiently destroyed. My officers stared at screens filled with red indicators, ships detonating, communication channels filling with screams. The feed from Sector 7 showed their commander Grenvos transmitting a final message before his vessel became expanding plasma. They are everywhere. They anticipated everything. The signal cut to static. Within the first 6 hours I had lost 400 ships. 400. The human weapons were less powerful than ours, but they were infinite in number and absolutely precise in application. They had weaponized patience, intelligence, and preparation against our confidence and arrogance. Sarah Chen's face appeared on our communication channels. She was smaller than I expected a leader to be, softer. Her eyes contained something I recognized as genuine, focused hatred. "Commander Kesh-Tollan," she said, her voice steady, despite the translation matrix converting her human speech patterns into Vex linguistic structures. "Your emperor sent you to conquer us. He sent you because he believed we were lesser. He sent you because he thought our size, our age, our technological level made us insignificant." She paused, and that pause was absolutely terrifying. "He was correct on one point. We are younger than you. We are smaller than you. But that means we have something you lost 3,000 years ago. We have something to prove. We have everything to lose. And apparently we are willing to burn the entire galaxy just to prove that you can bleed." Her image vanished. What happened next would reshape galactic politics forever. The humans did not simply defend their world. They launched a counterattack against our fleet positions in deep space. They had somehow constructed vessels, crude, yes, but absolutely lethal, that could operate in their space and ours. They had unified their planet's entire military-industrial complex into one singular weapon pointed at the Vex Collective. By the end of the first day, I had lost over 800 ships. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Vex commander faced a reality more terrifying than any nightmare. We were losing. Emperor Vrel received my distress call at precisely the moment when my fleet dwindled to 900 operational vessels. 900 out of 2,000. In less than 30 hours, Humanity had methodically dismantled over half my invasion force, and Vrel's response was not comfort or reinforcement. His response was absolute silence followed by a single transmitted order. Do not return to Vex space until Earth is conquered or you are dead. Choose one. The purple flush of his skin had shifted to a sickly shade of yellow, the color that indicated complete and utter fury mixed with shame. A Vex Emperor did not tolerate failure. Vrel did not tolerate weakness. And he certainly did not tolerate having his authority questioned by mammals who had invented television less than 200 years ago. I stared at that transmission for what felt like an eternity, but was actually only 47 seconds. Hextro watched me with those three eyes of his, waiting for orders. My tactical team held their breath in that particular way. Vex commanders do when they realize their superior officer is about to make a decision that determines whether they live or become decorative smears on a wall. I had two options really. Option 1, attempt to fulfill the Emperor's mandate and continue attacking Earth, which would result in the complete annihilation of my fleet, while perhaps inflicting enough damage to weaken their defenses. Option 2, mutiny, retreat, live, save my soldiers, betray the only civilization I had ever known. I chose option 3, which nobody had anticipated, because I had not anticipated it myself until that exact moment. I opened a direct channel to Sarah Chen. Hextro nearly fainted. That is a medical term among the Quillen. He actually fell backward, his secondary appendages flailing in panic. Commander, you cannot negotiate with them. You cannot even speak to them, unless authorized by an emperor who has sentenced us all to death, I interrupted. My vocal plates producing a sound that was distinctly unpleasant even by Vex standards. Hextro, that authorization ship has sailed. That authorization has been vaporized. We need new authorization. We need it from people who actually want us to survive the next few hours. Sarah Chen appeared on my screen within moments. She was in some kind of command center, surrounded by humans operating strange mechanical devices. Her expression when she saw me was almost worth the career ending. Almost. It was a mixture of surprise, satisfaction, and something else. Something that looked like grudging respect. Commander Kesh-Tollan, she said, leaning forward slightly. Calling me personally. How absolutely delightful. What brings the Supreme Commander to reach out? Finally realized your invasion is failing, just now figuring that out, are you? Her sarcasm was almost as refined as my own, which I found simultaneously offensive and impressive. I have a proposal, I said, cutting straight through the banter because I was running out of time, literally. My ships were being targeted and eliminated at a rate of 3 per minute. A proposal that benefits both of us. I am listening, she said, though her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Make it fast. We have your remaining fleet on targeting sequences, and honestly our weapons crews are getting bored. What I proposed was simple, elegant, and absolutely catastrophic for the Vex Collective. I offered to defect. More than that, I offered to reveal the locations of every Vex staging area, every supply depot, every military installation within 1,000 light years. I offered to disable my flagship's self-destruct protocols and place it under human command. I offered to provide 17 years of military intelligence gathered from my position within the Vex hierarchy. I offered to help humanity not just survive a Vex invasion, but to mount their own offensive against the collective. In exchange, I asked for 3 things: sanctuary for myself and my crew, protection for my family, who were scattered across various Vex worlds and likely to be executed for my betrayal, and one final request that would seem strange, unless you understood the culture I was abandoning. I asked for the chance to stand trial for my crimes before a human tribunal. Sarah Chen was quiet for a very long time. The sound of explosions continued in the background of her transmission. Our ships were still dying. Her defenses were still working perfectly. Why? She asked finally, and the question was loaded with so much weight it nearly crushed my audio receptors. Why would you betray your own people? Why would you side with us? I looked out the viewport of the devastation's whisper at the blue marble of Earth hanging in space. 3,000 years. That is how long the Vex had ruled through conquest and cruelty. 3,000 years of building an empire on the backs of subjugated species. 3,000 years of believing that might made right, that strength meant destiny, that any civilization strong enough to conquer was justified in doing so. Because, I said slowly, picking each word with absolute precision, you proved something I needed to know. You proved that there is more to power than weapons. There is more to dominance than simply having larger fleets. You proved that intelligence, planning, and absolute commitment to survival can overcome experience and resources. You proved that my emperor was a fool, and I was a fool for serving him without question. Most importantly, Dr. Chen, you proved that even primitive species, and yes, I still think you are primitive technologically, can achieve greatness when they have something real to fight for. Her expression shifted. That was not the answer she expected. It was not the answer any Vex military officer would have given. Most of my colleagues would have fought to the last ship, the last warrior, rather than admit that another species could outthink them. All right, she said, and the word carried finality. Stand down your weapons systems. Power down your shields to 50%. Allow our boarding parties to secure your vessel. If you are lying, if this is a trap, we have enough firepower to turn your ship into cosmic dust. I am not lying, I said. And honestly, turn it into dust anyway if I am. I deserve it for the arrogance I displayed. Within the next 6 hours, the remaining 412 ships of my fleet either surrendered or were destroyed in combat. The humans did not show mercy to those who chose to fight. They showed brutality, efficiency, and an absolute commitment to defending their world. By the time the last Vex vessel was eliminated, Earth's skies were clear, and their defensive grid was being scaled down to prevent unnecessary energy consumption. I stood in a detention facility on the planet's surface, in what humans called the African continent, a massive landmass that contained more biological diversity than some entire star systems, and watched the news broadcasts. Human media organizations were already calling it the greatest military victory in their recorded history. They were already beginning to strategize about future defenses. They were already preparing their people for the reality that the galaxy was not a safe place, and they could not rest on their laurels. More impressively, they were already discussing what to do with the Vex prisoners, me specifically. The court proceedings would begin in 3 weeks. Sarah Chen had informed me that human justice systems were slow by necessity, designed to prevent corruption through extensive deliberation and evidence review. The Vex justice system, by contrast, was simple. If the Emperor thinks you are guilty, and your execution happens immediately. As I sat in my cell waiting for trial, I realized something extraordinary. For the first time in 80 years of military service, I felt the weight of actual responsibility for my actions. Not the abstract responsibility of a commander, ensuring his fleet operates efficiently. Real responsibility, real consequence, real possibility of redemption or condemnation based on my actual choices rather than my rank or status. The irony was absolutely magnificent. Humanity had not just defeated the Vex Collective with this single battle, they had introduced something far more dangerous to galactic civilization. They had introduced the concept that even species could change, could grow, could choose a different path. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, Emperor Vrel was receiving reports of his fleet's destruction, his general's defection, and the undeniable reality that everything he had built his civilization upon, the superiority of force, the inevitability of conquest, the doctrine that weaker species must fall, was fundamentally, catastrophically wrong. The age of Vex dominance was ending. The age of humanity was beginning. And I, Kesh-Tollan, destroyer of worlds who had destroyed nothing, was going to get a front row seat to the most remarkable transformation in galactic history. I was going to watch as 7 billion humans took their small blue world and transformed it into something the galaxy had never seen before, a civilization born from resistance, forged in defiance, and absolutely determined never to bow again.